What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with reactions to the classics. Today I got a top 10 best album comebacks brought to us by a friend, one-time supporter, and patron channel, Slade Said. Thank you, Slade Said. Appreciate you. Appreciate all the patrons who make this thing go. If you'd like to support us in any way, check out the Patreon link below or that patron link on the end screen. We couldn't do it without them. I had to choose kind of a shorter title, but really it's a longer description of what this list is. So I'm going to let Slade Said, who put this thing together, describe it for us. He says, for my September list, because I'm filming this in September of 2023, I decided to go with the top 10 of best album comebacks for artists who have either dissolved or on a lengthy hiatus. The idea was sparked by the news that former Paisley Underground heroes Rain Parade had reformed and were recording a new album, the first since 1986. Their new album, Last Rays of a Dying Sun, was released on August 4th, and I held this list off to make sure I could include the album on the list. However, I have to say that I'm not impressed with it, unfortunately. It's not a bad album, but it's too much 1960s nostalgia to me. Now, I don't mind looking back and being influenced by great music of the past, but let's face it, Beach Boys perfected their style with the Pet Sounds album, and anyone trying to sound too much like them will always be a downgrade, and that's how I feel about the Rain Parade album. And I'm not even a huge Beach Boys fan. I mean, neither am I. It's not bad by any means, but it does not provide anything new either, and the good bits have basically been done better before by themselves and the Beach Boys. That emotion actually turns out to be the prevalent one when trying to find great comeback albums. I would agree with that totally. A large number of great bands of the past have tried to do a comeback within the last decade or so, but very few of them have actually done it successfully. Eagles and ABBA spring to mind as some who really would have done better by not trying to create their glory days. One YouTube channel even had the Eagles' comeback album as a contender for worst album ever. Luckily, not all comebacks are absolute disasters, but few comebacks really manage to update the sound and maintain the quality that they had in their heyday. It's hard to recapture that, right? Some of my favorite bands have tried to do it, and while not failing miserably like Eagles or ABBA, a lot of them never reached the quality or excitement levels of their past. This includes the comeback albums of bands like Ride, Faith No More, and Pixies, some of my absolute favorites from the late 80s and early 90s. Their comeback albums were decent, but not really that exciting, and whenever I feel like listening to one of the bands, it will always be the original albums from back then. Never, or very rarely, the new one or new ones. Now, with all that said, I did manage to find more than 10 albums, which were all worthy comebacks, and let's start with the more positive part of the show now. All right, if you've never joined us before, the music will not be in the video, but it will be at a Vimeo link below, so click down there and follow along with us. Number 10, you see it below, the DBs. Before We Were Born is the song we're going to listen to, but the album is Falling Off the Sky from 2012. So I'd say the first album on the list is Falling Off the Sky by New York-based jangle pop band, the DBs. The band was formed in 1978, included guitarist Peter Halsapple and bass player Chris Stamey, who had worked briefly with both Alex Chilton, of course, a big star, and Richard Lloyd of television. They recorded 2 highly acclaimed albums in the early 80s, but the sales figures were low, and so Chris Stamey left the band, who continued with other members and released a further 2 albums before calling it quits in 1987 after their final album, The Sound of Music. The original lineup reunited in 2005 for some live shows, and this continued until they decided to go back to the studio and record a new album, which was released in 2012. The sound is pretty typical DBs with a mixture of alternative rock and 70s classic pop rock. A good example of this is the song Before We Were Born, written and sung by Peter Halsapple. All right, I'm going to have the lyrics up as always. Thanks again, Slade Said. All right, Before We Were Born. So he's basically telling this girl that, they're meant to be together. He's known her before they were born. But I love the vocals. I love the sound of this. The guitar work is fantastic. So it's always interesting on these lists. We're ranking albums here. Slade Said's ranking albums. And when I pick my favorites at the end, I've got to go off songs. So this song was fantastic, man. So it makes me want to listen to this album. And that's always a good sign of a good pick. Next up, we have Deep Purple. The album Perfect Strangers. The song Perfect Strangers from 1984. Slade Said the next on our list is hard rock legends Deep Purple. I don't think this band needs a long introduction, so I'll just mention that the final album before the comeback was 1975's Come Taste the Band, which featured a lineup that's very different than the one who people will associate with the band. Neither Ian Gillan on vocals, Roger Glover on bass, or the great Ritchie Blackmore on guitars were in the band anymore. Not much of Deep Purple then, really, right? When they made it public that the ultimate lineup of the band, the quote Mark II era, would reunite and release a new album, the excitement among their fans became huge, and the band didn't disappoint with this album. While not a perfect album, despite the promising title and a bit overrated by some, it had a good number of songs that almost equaled their best from the 70s, with the title song certainly being one of them. I didn't even know this existed. We do have one review. We did it 4 years ago, which doesn't even seem possible, for, of course, Machine Head for Deep Purple. So you can go check that one out. after this. All right, Deep Purple, Perfect Strangers, off the Perfect Strangers album. What you would expect, right? I don't know a ton of Deep Purple. Like I said, we did Machine Head. But what I would expect, the great guitar work. I mean, the song was fine for me, but great guitar work, great arrangement, nice drumming. And I read about it that, they got together. This was one of the first songs, or this was the first song that they wrote when they got back together. They said they were sitting in the basement of this Vermont house. There's 3 foot of snow on the ground. There's a fire going, and they were just sitting around. No one was really playing or doing anything. And finally, they started riffing a little bit. And so it was like they were perfect strangers. Like they knew each other way back when, but now, they were kind of uncomfortable with it. It all just flowed. So that was kind of a little bit of the story that I read behind it. So good choice. Next up, you see it below. We got Jane's Addiction. The album is Strays from 2003. The song is Just Because. I have one Jane's Addiction reaction up to Ritual, Dewo, Habitual, that I did for one of our patrons, Robert. I used to not like Jane's Addiction, I got to be honest with you, but I did that album and really realized how good they were. But Slade said, Jane's Addiction is a band with a pretty short original career with only 2 proper studio albums and a live debut album, which included a few songs that were included on the studio albums. Even so, they did attract a lot of attention and airplay. Boy, did they ever on MTV based on those albums. They disbanded after a lot of touring for their 1990 album, which I just mentioned, Ritual, Dewo, Habitual, and later reunited a few times. But it wasn't until 2003 that they decided to record and release new material in the shape of the album Strays. They actually split up again already the following year before reuniting again with the original lineup in 2008 and releasing another comeback album in 2010. So in this case, we actually have 2 options for the comeback album from the same band. I chose to go with the first comeback since it's, quote, the original comeback, if that makes sense. The album was produced by Bob Ezrin, and the sound was an updated version of the original Jane's Addiction. It lacked a bit regarding the desire to explore new sounds and was less experimental than their previous work, and not exactly at the same level as the 2 original studio albums, but still a good effort by the band, and I'm happy they decided to record both this album and the 2011 album, The Great Escape Artist, which is just as good. All right, Jane's Addiction, Just Because. I think the subject matter is this girl's really selfish, I think is what it is, but, great soundscape, man. Guitar works really good. Pretty catchy. I read it's kind of interesting. This is our highest charting single, their most successful single worldwide. So that was interesting, but I did like the sound. Next up at number 7, we got Television. The album is self-titled, of course, Television in 1992. The song we're going to listen to is called Mr. Lee. So I said, just like Jane's Addiction, Television had a short initial period before disbanding. Television released their debut album, Marquee Moon, which is absolutely fantastic, in 1977. I can't believe we never reviewed it, but we've never reviewed it. And the sophomore album, Adventure, the year after, which we have a song battle featuring a song from that album. So I knew those 2 existed. Love Marquee Moon. I didn't know this one existed before disbanding during the summer of 1978. Marquee Moon is, of course, regarded as one of the most important albums in the history of alt-rock. So even despite a small discography and modest sales figures, the band is held in high esteem by the rock community. Exactly. The band reunited in the early 90s and released a single comeback album in 1992, after which they mostly existed as a veteran rock band, playing the occasional concert and doing short tours now and then. So it said watch the band live in 2017 as they did a 40-year anniversary tour for Marquee Moon, where they would play the entire album live in the original sequence. That'd be great, man. Obviously, nothing beats Marquee Moon in the Television discography, and the 1992 self-titled album is only their 3rd best, but it was still a very good album, as showcased by the pick here, Call Mr. Lee. Call Mr. Lee definitely had a Television sound. Tom Verlaine's vocals, I always love. Guitar work by Tom, and also Richard Lloyd on this one was the highlight for me, so I really enjoyed it. Unlike, Jane's Addiction, there was only 6 years between, here we're talking about 14 years between albums, so there is also a difference there in trying to recreate that sound. Next up, we have Daughters from the album You Won't Get What You Want from 2018, and the song is Daughter. So Slade said, next up on our list is the experimental noise rock band Daughters from Rhode Island. Formed in 2002, the band started as an extreme metal band in the grindcore category. They released their first album, Canada Songs, in 2003, and it's fair to say this wasn't mainstream music, but if you didn't like this set of extremely fast and intense songs, you'd be happy to find that the 10 songs included on the album only lasted a total of 11 minutes. That's insane. It was almost over before you put it on. The band spent 3 years before releasing the follow-up Hell Songs in 2006, and this time they really went at it. 10 songs again, but at more than 23 minutes. It was over twice the length of their debut full album. And one of the songs actually lasted 6 minutes. The sound was still anything but accessible, but at least they were developing, and no matter if you liked the music or not, was chords that these guys could play. Just don't expect any sing-along choruses. The band then actually disbanded in 2009 after recording the self-titled third full-length album, which was released in 2010 when the band wasn't officially together anymore. Two of the founding members then got together and reformed Daughters in 2013 and started working on new material, which finally saw the light of day in 2018 when You Won't Get What You Want was released. The album received rave reviews and topped a lot of Album of the Year lists. Style-wise, it was a natural progression from the previous albums, which had seen a gradual increase of traditional song structures in the music, while not exactly being made for the charts. This time, the album is of the proper length, 10 songs, 48 minutes. There's some controversy regarding the singer Alexis Marshall that I shall not get into here, but it almost made me exclude the band from the list. I'll just add the album was in my top 3 of 2018, and perhaps even the best of the year, which is high praise because Slade said knows a ton about music. But it is absolutely an acquired taste, even if the album is definitely their most accessible yet. It is not, and the band will probably never be, pop music. For this list, I went, and that's all right. That's okay. For this list, I went with what is probably the most accessible song on the album, Daughter, which is a slow, pretty groovy piece of art rock that most people like to some extent, and very far away from the extreme sounds of their earlier work. All right, Daughters with their song Daughter. Great musicianship here. I did have to read a little bit about Alexis Marshall, and I mean, I try to not pass judgment because art and personal life are two different things. And when you start doing that, man, you're not going to end up listening to anything or watching anything, actually, whether it's film or television. But this guy seems like a real piece of trash just all the way around. Just going to say that. I'm just going to lay that out there. So if you're a Daughters fan, don't be offended. It doesn't mean you can't like the music. But if you read about the guy, not just the recent allegations, but just in general how he behaves, there's a level. I don't mind people pushing the limits. But let's get back to the point. I think the musicianship and the instrumentation is the highlight for me. I like the vibe to it. You can feel the grindcore and even mathcore vibe there. So a good choice. Next up, we have Swans, their album My Father Will Guide Me Up a Rope to the Sky in 2010. We listened to the song Jim. So it said from one extreme art rock band to the next. Swans is not a new band to most viewers of this channel, as both I and other patrons have forced Sean and Trey to listen to a few songs by them now. Now, I'm hot and cold on Swans. Trey likes them more than I do. I mean, the stuff that I like, I really like the stuff I really don't, but I know their fans are so hardcore, so I totally get it. Swans MVP Michael Jarrah had disbanded the band after 1997 Soundtracks for the Blind and instead formed the band Angel of Light with varying members, which was a much more melodic and traditional band than Swans. Okay, he released 6 albums with Angel of Light before deciding to relaunch Swans with a new cast, mostly made up by the final lineup of Angel of Light. The new version of Swans then released this album, My Father Will Guide Me Up a Rope to the Sky, in 2010, which, as is always the case with the new Swans album, required a few listenings before you got it, but it really is a great Swans album. Side note, Swans released a new album in June of 2023 and will definitely be high on Slade Said's Album of the Year list for 2023. All right. Swans, Jim. It sounded very Swans to me. That's the best I could tell you. I don't know their catalog inside and out by any means, but I would imagine if you were looking for that sound and they came back, you would be very pleased with that. Michael talked about Jim. He said it's about musician Jim J.G. Thirlwell, creator and principal member of the band Fotis. He said the song's a tribute to my old friend, the eruptive genius J.G. Thirlwell, Fotis, and Wiseblood. I won't explain how the words refer to Jim specifically, but listening to his music lately gave me hope to continue working and living myself. I was really happy when we found a groove for this song. So natural. I see this groove as containing a seed of something that will continue into the next Swans album. So part of what I want to tell you what the song is about, but part of what I want to tell you, I want to expand on that point. That's exactly right. The groove of this song becomes almost hypnotic, right? It just really gets you into the song and kind of the way that Michael works you through it with the vocals and kind of the cadence of it. It just all works. So for me, a pretty good grade for a Swan song, which is high praise. I thought the last song was an epic at 6 minutes, 46 seconds. This song is really an epic. It's over 8 minutes long. We got Hum from the album Inlet in 2020. The song is Shapeshifter. Slade said Hum is an alternative rock band from Illinois who was formed in 1989. The band plays a blend of shoegaze, dreamy space rock, and post-metal that both sounds very original and recognizable at the same time. They released 4 studio albums between 1991 and 1998 before disbanding in 2000. Despite receiving very good reviews, especially for their final album, 1998's Downward is Heavenward, Album sales were poor and the band was dropped by the label, prompting the band to dissolve. They reformed a number of times for a few concerts here and there, but it wasn't until 2020 before the band surprised most people with the release of a new album, Inlet, which is a great album and definitely high on my album of the year list. From that album, I picked the album closer, Shapeshifter. So we're looking at 22 years between albums on this bad boy. Shapeshifter hum. That song was so good. I really, really enjoyed that. What a journey. All of it. I like the atmosphere. The guitar work obviously is fantastic. The vocal performance. I'm not really sure what it's about, right? I don't know if it's some abstract stuff. I mean, they're out in the sea and he's not sure he can swim and she's out there and then he comes back to land and reaches for her hand. So I don't know. Is she dead or is she there with him? Did she kill herself? I don't know, because I mean, I didn't mention it. I should have mentioned it in the Daughter's song. The lyricism itself in the Daughter song was very powerful because it's about the daughter committing suicide and what that makes the protagonist feel like, you know, the downward feeling. In this song, you get that same sort of atmosphere just a little bit, but yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know what it's about, but it's 8 minutes of greatness. All right, we got 3 songs left. We got Oxbow from the album Thin Black Duke from 2017. The song Cold and Well Lit Place. So I said the San Francisco-based art rock band Oxbow was formed in 1987. They released 4 studio albums in the 90s, but only 2 in the 2000s, and went on hiatus after their 2007 album, Their Narcotic Story. So, I mean, they went 20 years there. Despite pretty much all their albums receiving rave reviews by the music press. The music is very hard to describe. It's sometimes referred to as avant-garde rock with elements of freeform jazz, and obviously, it's not made for the masses, so any commercial success would come as a major surprise. This is definitely the kind of music you need to listen to a number of times for it to really gel. But when you finally get it, you are seriously hooked, as I am, Slade said. The band, a 4-piece, consists of 4 very talented people who have a lot of artistic activities outside the band, as they would have to since they hardly can live off the album sales or streaming royalties. As would be expected from a band like this, frontman Eugene Robinson has a unique style and is not for everyone. I just can't wait to listen. This is a great build-up. The band also writes the songs in a different manner than most. Guitarist Nico Wenner composes most of the music, which the band then rehearses as instrumentals before Eugene Robinson starts to write vocal lines and lyrics. A little bit like REM used to do it back in the day. The band often has little or no idea what he comes up with until the finished product. The band returned with a new album in 2017, Thin Black Duke, their only album of the decade. It was a great album, certainly one of my favorites of the year. From that album, I chose the opener, Cold and Well Lit Place. Side note from Slate said the band just released a new album at the end of July 2023, Love's Holiday, which you can already say will now feature highly on his album of the year list for 2023. All right, Cold, Well Lit Place. Yeah, kind of a hard song for me even to describe what style that would fit into, and the lyricism is pretty abstract. I mean, there's a few theories on it, but I'm not really going to get into all that. But I thought the instrumentation was good. I liked the way Eugene delivered the vocals, right? It really kind of drew you in. It just kind of all worked together, although it's a little hard for me to describe exactly how that is, but a good choice. All right, we got 2 albums left. We got the Dream Syndicate, who I only know through Slate said, really good stuff. The album, How Did I Find Myself, here in 2017. We're going with the song Glide. Slate said, and so we arrive at number 2 on this list with the Dream Syndicate, who I often include on my list here. This is one of my most anticipated comeback albums, so I was pretty sure they wouldn't disappoint, given that main man Steve Wynn had consistently released quality material since the band disbanded in 1989, and the band did not disappoint. The sound was an updated version of what made the band so great in the 80s, and the fact that they were 30 years older than the last time they made an album does not show on the album at all, which is amazing. I mean, you got to think about that. 30 years. They absolutely still know how to bring out the energy and noise on this comeback album, along, of course, with Steve Wynn's ability to write great hooks and melodies. For this list, I chose the song Glide, which is somehow particularly a fantastic song to listen to when you drive your car on a freeway in the evening. Come to think of it, the whole album is like that. I love albums like that, right? Let's go. All right, Glide, the Dream Syndicate. Just a fantastic song, right? Just a fantastic song. I mean, Steve Wynn's guitar work on here, just the whole vibe of it all. And, you know, the lyricism on here, written from somebody who's older, you know, like he's telling you this. He's telling you he's not going to get all excited or upset about the things that he used to, right? Because I've learned this. I'm 52 years old. With age, you learn. You don't get so wound up or, you know, worried or upset. I mean, there's still things in life that do that to you. But the longer you live, the more you realize this too shall pass, right? Because you've been through it. This is the experience of life. In verse 2, like, I'm not bound by rules, I'm not corrupted by code, or bothered by civility or norms, or anything that kept me up night after night. Older than I was when I made the rules that held me down. I don't think I'll be traveling down that road again. And I just glad I may never get higher. I don't have to come down. So those are great lyrics right there. Great lyrics. Fantastic choice for number 2. All right, coming in at number 1, we got Dinosaur Jr., the album Beyond in 2007. The song This Is All I Came to Do. So it said Dinosaur Jr. dissolved after the 1997 release Handed Over, which was a good album, but didn't do a lot of sales-wise, and it seemed that Dinosaur Jr. pretty much had missed the boat when grunge came and went in the early 90s. After some years working with other bands, releasing a handful of solo albums, bandleader Jay Mascis assembled the original trio, including bassist Lou Barlow, who had left the band after touring for their third album, Bug, which is fantastic. One of the reasons why Lou Barlow left the band was that he wrote a lot of songs, but Jay Mascis rarely accepted to include any of them on the albums. However, in the comeback album from 2007 Beyond, Lou Barlow had 2 songs included. Both are really good. Not only Lou Barlow's are good, though, it is in fact a great album throughout, and to my ears, only You're Living All Over Me and Bug from the original run, and probably also After, were superior. For this list, I went with the Jay Mascis song, This Is All I Came to Do. And I really got to know Dinosaur Jr. when Trey and I did the album draft series last year in 2022, where we picked the top 10 albums from every year, 1965 to 2022. Go check that series out. We got them ranked by decade. We got them ranked by year. And I really, really came to enjoy the greatness of Dinosaur Jr. through that. This Is All I Came to Do. Just a fantastic way to finish off this list, right? Jay Mascis, and just the great hook, melody, guitar work. I mean, this song was probably my favorite song on here, I think. Either that or the last track. But yeah, really, really good. And just an example of why I hold Dinosaur Jr. in such high acclaim. So that's going to transition me to my favorite tracks. Now, it's always weird on these lists when they're about an album, and I got to pick the song, right? So I'm not picking the album. Slade Said knows these albums. I don't know these albums, but I'm just telling you my favorite tracks. Honorable mention, the first track, the DBs, the song Before We Were Born off that album, Falling Off the Sky. Jane's Addiction from the album Strays, we got Just Because. Television from the self-titled album, we got Call Mr. Lee. And then my faves are going to be Hum from the album Inlet in just 2020, not that long ago, Shapeshifter. The Dream Syndicate from How Do I Find Myself, their album in 2017, the song Glide. And then this last song, obviously, Dinosaur Jr. from the album Beyond in 2007, and the song This Is All I Came to Do. So let me know what your favorite tracks are off here, or your favorite albums off here, if you know those. What are your favorite comeback albums? Remember the parameters kind of, we were gone, right? We went away and we're coming back. Not just we had a couple albums that were flops and this is our comeback album. So thank you to Slade Said for curating this list as always. And until next time, guys, I will see you.